Welcome to this episode of Trauma Rockstars. I've been so looking forward to this interview. I want to introduce the world to Joanna Birkhart. She is a multidimensional healer as well as a quantum alchemist channeler, and she's also an author. She has so much going on and she does so much to help people with their trauma journeys and healing. And I can't wait for you all to get to know her. So, welcome, Joanna. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
So I know quite a bit about you,
Yeah.
but my listeners probably don't know much about you. And I find what you're doing so fascinating. And you have many, many gifts. I mean, you have psychic abilities, you're a medium, you do so much in addition
Yeah.
to coaching people, depending on what their needs are in their journeys. So, can you just kind of go back to how you became you?
Ooh, that's a journey in itself. Well, I mean, I've always seen and felt spirits, and I mean, the earliest I remember seeing spirit was 3 years old. But back then, in that age, I mean, I'm 46, so back then, my parents they didn't know what to do with that. That kind of stuff wasn't really talked about. So, and about age 7, I had a prophetic dream, and a year later, on the same exact date, it came true. Oh, I just got goosebumps.
I'm
Um,
getting it. What was the dream about?
that my great grandmother died. And I think when you're 7, that's scary because you don't know, did I do that? And so I believe that was around the time that everything kind of shut off. But I never stopped sensing. Like I always say that psychic mediums, the way that we are able to read energy, most of us learned that growing up in trauma, where we had to be able to read people's moods, their emotions, what their next action was going to be. And so I was always still doing that. And I was obsessed with Sylvia Browne, the psychic medium.
Oh, yeah.
I used to run home from school to watch Montel Williams when she was on every
Yep.
Wednesday. I was obsessed with aliens and all of that stuff. And it just never made sense to me. I wasn't a church person. My family wasn't religious, nothing like that.
Hmm.
And so I always said I was spiritual, even though I had no idea what that really meant. So fast forward 2008, I went through what I now know as a dark night of the soul. And it was a very long one. We're talking a year and a half of deep bottom of the barrel depression. I wasn't taking care of my family. I wasn't cleaning the house. I didn't want to move. And I just, after about a year and a half, and something shifted inside of me. And it's like I woke up one day and I had this thirst to who am I? And because I didn't know what was happening, I took it literal and went on to Ancestry and did my family tree on both ends. Like, obviously, that wasn't it. Um, and then in 2013, my grandmother died, and my grandmother was like my mother. My mom had left when I was 3 years old, so she was the only real mother that I knew. And about 6 months after she died, I was in bed, sleeping middle of the night, and it was as if a rope was tied right underneath my breasts and pulled me straight up like a board. And she was standing there in full apparition, like clear as day. She appeared in her mid 30s when she probably felt her best, where I would still recognize her, and her lips weren't moving. But I knew exactly what she was telling me. She was telling me that my father was sick and was dying. And it shook me to my core because I had never seen spirit in that clearly before or heard them that clearly before.
How long after she passed did she appear to you?
6 months.
And then up until that, had you kind of shut this all off with everything that happened with your great grandmother?
Yeah, like I mean, I was always intuitive. I was always the friend that knew when someone was pregnant before they told anybody. I always knew things, but I
Hmm.
didn't really know why or how.
Hmm.
I didn't have a word for it. I didn't even have the word intuitive for it. I was just like,
Right.
I don't know. I just know things.
Right.
I never knew why, and I didn't judge it. I never went down any rabbit holes looking for it. But I knew she was right. I could feel it in my soul. And my dad who was like my everything, my whole entire world. He had been kind of distancing himself on video chat. We lived across the country from each other at that point. And in 2015, it was the best and worst year of my life. I was engaged to be married. I was planning a wedding. We were building a house. I just got a $50,000 a year promotion at work. Like you're thinking, oh my God, everything is going so good. And then I went out to visit and saw my dad, and he had aged 30 years. He was only 56 at the time. He looked like he was 86. And when I left that trip, I told my husband at the time, I'm going to be back really soon. Like I don't know what's wrong with him. He won't talk to me about it. And it was 2 days later, they found him in the street, and I had to go home, sell my childhood home, retire him, sell everything he owned, and begin the journey of watching my father die. I lost my job. We had to restructure the home loan. It just kind of, everything just flipped upside down. And I was grieving a man who was still alive, and it just does things to you that you can't put words to, right? But I had a really traumatic childhood. I mean, every type of abuse you can imagine, but like most people, I disassociated from all of that to the point where I disassociated so hard I blacked out most of those memories. So a few months after he died, every single memory and feeling of all of that abuse that I had blacked out came back, on top of every single psychic sense opening wide up, like wide open. I was hearing, feeling, knowing things, seeing things. And I was an extrovert, and now I was like, I can't go anywhere. I could feel when somebody had something wrong with them medically when they didn't even know yet. I could hear babies in the womb talking to me. Like I was,
Holy cow.
for a while, thinking I'm going crazy. Like
Yeah.
I knew I had these experiences before, but dealing with all of that on top of now having to try to process all of this trauma that was coming back up, it took me to the edge of suicide.
Were you horrified that all of a sudden you just can, like, you have all these senses and energy and intuition coming into you all at once? It had to have been like very hard to handle.
It was extremely overwhelming, and my husband at the time was no support. Like he didn't understand what was happening. I'm pretty sure he thought I was crazy. He's like, I don't understand what's happening. And so I was all alone in it. And so when I got to that point of the edge of suicide, it was in that moment that I had admitted, because I was on depression meds, I was on anxiety meds, and I had had a stroke 3 days after our wedding, when my dad was still, living with us. And so they had put me on anti-seizure medications because they couldn't figure out what the real problem was. So they said, well, we're just going to classify it as that. So I was on a cocktail of really crazy medicine. And my husband at the time was so over how bad I was. He was like, please go to the doctor. Please get, your medicine changed or something. And I looked at him and I said, I told him I don't want to live anymore. And,
Yeah.
in that moment, it was the tiniest crack of light. It was like my darkness shattered. And I just stopped and I was like, wait a minute. Maybe I do want to live. And when I say I crawled over glass and rocks and, just little tiny steps at a time, that's what I did. I had a huge quote from Elizabeth Taylor that I posted and taped to the side of my wall so that when I rolled over in the morning, I would have to read it to force me to get out of bed. And I just looked for anything online that could help understand what I was going through, and realized that, I had a spiritual awakening years ago, and it just now was just opening up to a whole different level. And so I started studying on how I can work with these gifts and hone them in, not to go out and help other people, because at the time I was actually a business coach. I had transitioned from what I was doing in real estate over to business coaching. And I just started using it to help myself, to help me start the healing journey. And it took a good year for me to get a handle on things and feel somewhat normal, if that's even a thing, feel somewhat at a 0 point. And there were times where I would literally be crying on my closet floor, just begging for someone to help me. And I remember there was many things that they did, but in 2019, I was in stage 3 adrenal fatigue. My marriage was failing. Was still grieving. I had gained a bunch of weight, and my thyroid was out of whack because of my adrenals being out of whack.
Yeah.
I had no financial, mental, emotional, or physical support from my spouse. So I'm running a business, 3 kids, 2 dogs, 3 cats. It's just like household. And I was just broken. And here I am. I'd already transitioned my business into more spiritual coaching. And I was laying on my floor again. My closet was like my safe space. And I heard these statements that came through. And then all of a sudden I would get the best way I can describe it is like an instant download of like, you all of a sudden knew exactly what it meant.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up calling it the Purification Process. And it was these 4 frequencies, these 4 simple phrases, and they have a deep meaning underneath them. But I started working with that process every single day. Anytime I was triggered, anytime I had any type of emotional anything, anytime I was struggling. And it changed my life, because now I was able to do something that didn't require me to spend hours in meditation. It didn't require me to sit down and write a novel of journaling. I didn't have time for that. I'm a business owner, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I'm trying to get my health back on track and do all these other things. And this process came through, and it allowed me to, the minute it happened, to sit down or stand up or do it in my head and just work through those 4 statements. And it allowed me to start alchemizing that energy immediately and shifting my perspective and shifting my frequency. And I just ran with it. And now I teach it. It's in my 2nd book. It's in almost all of my courses and it's all over YouTube, because I'm like, everybody needs to know about this because it's so simple. And I think being now many years into this, well over 10 years, this industry has become trendy and it's become overcomplicated. Everybody wants to sell you like this overcomplicated practice where you have to do all this. And let's be real, nobody has time to do that.
Right.
And so it makes healing feel overwhelming. Like, I'm never going to get better. I'm never going to be able to get through this pattern. I'm never going to be able to stop this. And I found a way to. And so that's pretty much how I became who I am. I mean, I've studied and got certified in certain modalities. Right. And I like to experiment and try new things. And it's interesting because I've just developed this huge toolbox of all of these things that I just pull from or mix together and can tailor it to people. But everything I teach, everything that I share, it's because it's worked for me. If it doesn't work for me first, I'm not going to even talk about it, because what's the point? I need evidence.
Yeah. So you can, yes, because you can feel the sincerity coming out of you, like that this is legit, like you need to tell the world about this.
Yeah.
Were those that you said they were 4 steps?
Yeah, I can go over them.
Did those, I don't know if I'm going to say this correctly. I don't want to misspeak. So just forgive me if I don't, but did those come to you by like your guides?
Yeah. So it was, there was there was a guide speaking to me.
Okay.
And so with my clairaudience. And so I would hear these phrases. And I always tell people, your intuition, your guides, they speak in incomplete sentences. It's a legit breadcrumb trail. And they're never going to give you the whole map. And so I had gotten used to just writing things down, because it wouldn't always make sense right away. But, after you have like 7 or 8 of the phrases, you're like, okay, wait a minute. This is starting to become a puzzle. Like I'm starting to see a flow here. So I heard those, but my claircognizance, which is just a knowing, when I would read the first ones, like the first one's I see you, I just got this download of knowing what that meant, and that there was several meanings and ways, but they said all you have to do is go through these steps, and you don't even have to say it, but each statement has a frequency to help you realign inside of you. And that
Oh,
I would be able to carry that frequency forward when I spoke it or taught it or utilized it. And so if you want, I can go through the process. It's not too long.
yeah, no, I do. And I just want to tell you, I would love for you to, because I know you don't want to, it's in your program, so you
Yeah.
could just give like the high level, but
Yeah.
you said something that, thank gosh, I'm sitting down because I would have fell over. What you just said earlier about going through trauma and how the energy, I think you said that you feel like you
Hmm.
feel everything around you.
Yeah.
Like, I've never heard it described like that, and that's how I've always been. Like, I don't have, like, if I do have the gifts you have, I'm not aware of them, but I'm trying.
Everybody does. You just,
Yes, but
everybody
I
has certain ones. Yeah.
yeah, and I've always been so, like, sensitive to other people's energies, and I've in the past have blocked that out. But
Yeah.
now that I don't block that out anymore, I'm ultra sensitive to it, and I never really thought it was. I thought that was just who I was. I was type A personality.
Yeah.
You just can feel things, but I never related that to it has to do with the trauma that I've been through.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, now they're even discovering that things like autism and ADHD can be formed due to trauma in
Mhm.
childhood, creating a highly sensitive person. Oh, look at the baby.
I love.
And so, being a highly sensitive person, we can feel
Mhm.
energetic shifts that can't be seen. We can
Mhm.
feel solar flares, astrological
Yes.
alignments. You can, if you walk into a room and someone in there is really not a good person or has really bad energy, or is carrying a lot of heavy trauma inside of them, we can feel it without them
Yes.
ever saying a word.
Yes.
And so, like most people, I started out with learning how to protect my energy. And
Mhm.
later, channeling Master Metatron, Archangel Metatron, he said, no, don't do that. He said, when your protection implies resistance, that you don't want to feel something, what you resist persists. He said, you have to learn energetic boundaries, discern, allow it to move through you like a cloud in the
Mm,
sky. And in the
okay.
moment, as you feel it, you say in yourself, to your mind, that is what they feel. Because
Mm,
when you say that, you're now put in observer mode and you're not absorbing it. And so this was a practice. And it's actually something that I've come to find over the last 10 years, that most people who teach you how to use your spiritual gifts, they don't
mhm.
teach you this part. And I feel like that's a disservice, because this is a foundation. If you don't know
Okay.
where your energy ends and someone else's begins, or in spirit form, you're going to get sick, very sick, physically,
So that's
emotionally,
something
and
I need to
drained.
work on.
Yeah.
That's something. Um, wow. Okay. So this is, I mean, we're 10 minutes in and I'm already like
It's only been
mind
10 minutes.
mind blown. Yeah. Okay. So go and explain, briefly your steps just so
Okay.
people kind of can understand like what they might like look like.
Yeah. So the purification process starts with I see you. I see you is you taking accountability and responsibility for whatever's happening in your life, how you feel in the moment, what's triggering you, that you're overthinking. It's calling it out. The moment you call it out, you take away 50% of its power. Because what you
And
look
I
at,
see you meaning you're talking to yourself.
yes, I see you.
Yes.
I see what's happening. I
Yes.
see what you're
Okay.
feeling. It's you. When you take away 50% of its power right away, is because what you look at disappears. So
Uh-huh.
when you decide to face something, right now, how all that energy and buildup shrinks, because now you're recognizing it. Now, the second one is I hear you. I hear you is, what is the story in your head? Because what you have to recognize is that's a version of you. Now, we call this parts work. It could be an inner child, it could be an ego protector personality, but it's a identity shaped by trauma or circumstances that is telling a story. That story is not always true, it's their perspective. But when we hear it, we're saying, I hear you. Like, I hear what's happening. And if we all know that most people just want to be seen and heard. So that
Yeah.
version of you probably didn't have somebody who heard you, who saw you. So right now you're already starting out the gate with seeing yourself and hearing yourself,
Mm.
holding space for yourself.
Okay.
The third one is I am safe. Now, I am safe has two very distinct parts. One is to literally look around and recognize there's not a tiger about to eat you,
Mm-hmm.
because your nervous system is feeling the trauma or the overthinking or whatever you're feeling as an actual attack that you're about to die. That's how your nervous
Yeah.
system responds when you're in fight or flight. So you want to start there, like, okay, look, we see we're not in any danger. The
Mm-hmm.
second is I am safe to feel this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I feel safe has multiple meanings. And so it's like, put your hands on your body, relax your shoulders, and just be like, this is what this feels like. It's just a sensation. We
Mm-hmm.
don't always have to label it shame, guilt, whatever,
Yeah.
angry. Sometimes we don't even know what to label it. It's just a sensation, and you want to pay attention to where it lives in your body. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what lights up in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is, and it's tattooed on my arm, I love you anyway. I love you anyway
I
is, even if you feel like you're not worthy, even if you feel like you're not enough, even if you feel like you're broken, even if you're angry, even if your life is falling apart, you should be the kindest voice in your head. You
mm-hmm.
should be the most compassionate. It's okay to love yourself in all your forms. And as someone who legit hated herself and felt like she had no worth, when that changed, I never wanted to forget it. So it's tattooed in an
Mm-hmm.
infinity symbol on my
And I've
arm.
got the infinity right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the process. And I can do it all at one time now in my head in under a minute. And
Yeah.
but that took a little bit of time. So in the beginning, most people kind of have to go through the steps. But if you
Mm.
practice it enough, it's instantaneous, and you don't
Yeah.
have to go anywhere. You don't have to sit down. You can if you want, but you can
Mm-hmm.
be in a full triggering conversation and be doing the steps in your head. And it's
Mm.
really just it changed my life, and it's changed
Wow.
so many clients.
That's that's so powerful. But you said something when last time we were talking, and I can't remember what it was, but you said you're not broken, you're becoming.
Yeah,
You're becoming. I loved that. That it's like you almost have to have those broken pieces to put that puzzle back together
yeah,
to be, and that resonated with me so much when you said that, because I was just like, yeah, that's because I've always said I'm not broken, I'm traumatized, but no,
yeah,
but I'm not broken, I'm becoming, because going through and putting those broken pieces back together defines who we are,
yes.
and it just helps, it just clarifies everything.
And sometimes things need to break for you to see all the pieces, because when you're in it, you can't see anything but what you're in. So sometimes we have to break out of that shell and look at all the pieces and go, this piece no longer fits. This
Mm-hmm.
piece no longer fits. Well, what can I make with the rest?
Mm-hmm.
And put ourselves back together, because we're in those broken pieces that we don't use again. Those are identities. Those are
Mm-hmm.
versions of ourselves that are integrating back into the whole. And so we have to be willing to let that go.
Yeah, because like we suppress enough with
Hmm.
trauma, you need to just face it head on.
Yeah.
So, Johanna has an amazing podcast called Cosmic Blonde.
I know
And
your episode's coming out soon.
oh, yay! Um, and she talks about a lot of this on there, but she also has her coaching business too. So, which did you start first?
The coaching business.
Okay.
Yeah, I transitioned. I was doing, like I said, I was doing business coaching. I'm really good at seeing someone's business and being able to rearrange and fine tune and help them do all of that. And I just
Mm-hmm.
noticed that I started attracting more spiritual entrepreneurs, and they started having other questions,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew the answers, right? So I was just channeling information for them. And so then I just kind of slowly transitioned into that space, but it required me to kind of come out of the spiritual closet, because
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't really done that. And I lived at the time on a little island on the outer banks of North Carolina that's all Bible belts, and
Yeah.
people, I mean, I was ostracized when I came out. It was a lot of judgment and a lot of persecution and ridicule, and it just helped me to develop a thick skin and to not judge myself anymore, and realize
Mhm.
that what people judge is what they judge within themselves.
Yeah. So and then did that lead you to kind of start the podcast to just
I had another
be able to
podcast
reach
before
more
this one.
people? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with my coaching, my girlfriend and I, who she's a tarot reader and a coach, we decided to create a podcast, and that was called The Breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
And we were big Tom Petty fans, so it kind of went together,
Oh,
and
cool.
so I just wanted to come on and have banter back and forth and these conversations about this journey. And she had a different vision. So after the second season, we didn't continue. And I took a
Mm-hmm.
break. I took a couple of years off. And then it was 3 years ago, I was like, I heard Cosmic Blonde in my head. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, it's time. And it
Mm-hmm.
started with just me telling my story, sharing my wisdom, sharing the things that I overcame and how I did it. And then I slowly started doing guests, whereas season
Mm-hmm.
3 is going to be mostly guests instead of just me talking. But it's become a place where it's a safe space for me to share. It's a
Yeah.
place for people to go who maybe can't afford to hire a coach or even get a book, And so the more that we can share transformational stories, because people heal through storytelling.
It's been so therapeutic for me.
Yes.
I don't mean to sound selfish because I started this for other people because I want
Right.
to help other people, but in return, it's been so therapeutic for me.
I mean, writing my second book was therapeutic, right? Finishing my last book that I just finished, therapeutic. Like there's something so powerful about telling your story however you choose to tell it. But then when
Mhm.
other people get to grieve and feel and cry and process through your story, they don't realize they're also processing for themselves
Mhm.
without the attachment or their own story. They can kind of set that aside.
Mhm.
And so I've just found that storytelling is one of the most powerful ways for people to heal and to learn.
Mhm. So let's talk about your books because you're writing your third right now.
Yeah, I just finished it. I'm in the
Yes.
process of submitting for book deals.
Okay. So what was tell everyone your first book?
Well, my first book wasn't in it's kind of was a I don't know how to describe it. My first book was wrote for my son. So he was bullied in school
Mhm.
by teachers, excuse me, and students.
Mhm.
And I couldn't find a resource. He was like 8-year-old boy. I couldn't find a resource at the time that I thought was suitable for him. And
Mhm.
so I decided to write one. And I was only going to publish it, self-publish it, so it looked like a book for him. And I
Mhm.
ended up putting it out in the world. Side note, that's a cool story is about a year and a half, 2 years later, after I had published that book, my son was back in therapy, and I had my monthly meeting with the therapist to just kind of check in. She's telling me
Mhm.
all the resources that she was using to help my son. She's telling me about this one book. And I said, "Do you have it?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Flip it over." And she looks down, she looks up, and she's like, "You wrote that?" And I said, "Yeah, you're using a book I wrote for my son to help my son." And what turned out is because the book wasn't colorful or animated or anything like
Yeah.
that, a lot of the kids didn't really stick to it, but it became a guide for parents to use to talk to their kids. And
Uh,
therapists started picking it up, counselors started picking it up, places like that. And so that was a really cool moment.
what are the chances of that? Did you sign it for her?
No, because we never met in person. His therapy
Oh,
was all
okay.
online. But it was a super cool full circle moment,
That's
that
amazing.
really just validated the whole point of the book. It didn't matter if anybody else bought it at that point. I knew that it was doing its job.
Yeah, yeah.
And then my second book is called Holy Grail: The Journey Through My Soul's Evolution, and that is my story of my awakening. So I
Hmm.
share a little bit about my trauma. I don't go super deep. And I had a lot of fear when I was writing that book. In fact, it took me a year to finish the last chapter to even submit to editors because
Hmm.
my perpetrators are still alive. And I had this overwhelming fear. So I had to work through that fear But the book shares a little bit about my trauma, and a lot of it is the channeled information that I was given to heal myself
Mm-hmm.
and kind of the process of how it felt to go through an awakening and have all these things happen all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very powerful healing journey for me.
Mm.
But I still had a lot of fear when I put it out on the market. So that did not
That's
help
got to
book
be
sales.
horrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, because the frequency you hold is what's going to be reflected back to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried for 3 years to write the book that I just finished. And that one's called Desperately Seeking Me, The Journey, The Road to Finding and Choosing Myself.
Mm-hmm.
I had zero fear writing that book. I went really deep, and some of it's pretty dark
Yeah.
into what I went through. And it takes you all the way through to like, these are the patterns I caught. These are the things that I learned. This is the things that shifted. This is how I shedded this identity, and takes you back into the light. And it's important for me that the book remain in that way because there's not a
Mm-hmm.
lot of books out there today that go into the deep end of the
Yes.
pain. And I feel like there needs to be. We have to stop sugarcoating things. We have to stop
Yes.
glossing over things just to make a good seller. Like if I don't get picked up by a publisher or a publisher wants to change it, I'll self-publish before I let that
Mm-hmm.
happen because
Mm-hmm.
it's so important for people to be able to walk through my story with me because my actual story might be a little different than yours, but everybody resonates with the same concepts and had similar things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I want them to see that when you choose you, doesn't mean you still don't consider other people. But if you're not the first person in that people that you're considering,
Mm-hmm.
you're self-abandoning. And my wound was abandonment. I was abandoned by my mom. I was emotionally abandoned by my father when I was being abused. And
Mm-hmm.
so I picked partners that abandoned me and I abandoned myself because that's all I knew.
Yeah.
So I had to learn not just energetic boundaries, but boundaries of saying, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go there. That's not right for me to speak up for myself, to set, you know, consequences if they violated the boundaries. And just that it was okay for me to choose myself and what was right for me. And again, everybody goes, oh, that's selfish. Well, are you supposed to be centered in somebody else?
Right.
No, but you can still consider other people. You just have to make sure that you're the first one you consider in that people. And so I had to find myself by shedding all of these identities shaped by my trauma of the people pleaser, the chameleon, the one that became who everybody wanted her to be so that
Mm-hmm.
she could get a morsel of love or acceptance or her needs met. And it just was never enough. It was like I'm giving and giving and giving, and I'd get a breadcrumb back. And that's how I got to stage 3 adrenal fatigue, you know? And so I
Yeah.
was like, okay, we can't do this anymore. And so I kind of
Mm-hmm.
take people through that journey of not just finding myself again by shedding all of those identities, but choosing myself. And in choosing myself, my circle got real small
Oh, yeah. It sure does.
because everybody who was benefiting from me being a people pleaser and doing all the things that I didn't want to do showed their true colors.
Yeah.
They were only in it for what they were getting.
Yeah. And a lot of them don't even realize it,
No.
but they just fall off, on their own. It's funny you mentioned that. I think I told you this when we were talking before that that was the biggest thing with my clarity that I got was the forgiveness that I needed to do for myself.
Yeah.
And that's like what happens when you start putting yourself first and you start looking back at decisions you've made, like you said, and choices you've made, and then you figure out, oh, well, that's why I did that. That's
Yeah.
why I did this. That's why I chose this person. That's why, and it was a lot of my biggest thing was the time that I lost making all these. I had to forgive myself for that and not beat myself up about it anymore.
Yeah. And the best way to do that is to recognize that the version of you that made that decision was making the decision with the resources, the awareness that they
Yes.
had, all of that. Like they were doing the very best that they could.
Yes.
And you can never judge a past version of you or a decision that you make based upon what you know today, because you did not know that then.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't know what you know today without making that mistake.
Right.
It's
Right.
important to fail. It's
Hmm.
important to make mistakes. You just can't stay down in that. You have to say, okay. And for me, it took 3 marriages, 3 failed marriages to go, oh my God, I've married my parents 3 times.
Right. Yeah.
And
That had to have been when you real, yeah, that's got to
oh,
be so
the
hard.
hardest thing you will ever do is face yourself in the mirror and go, holy
Yeah.
shit, this is
Yeah.
what I did this whole once it hit, I was like, how did I not see this before?
Hmm.
And I got really upset with myself, and then I had to move through that whole process of I didn't know what I didn't know. And my nervous system was attracted to what felt comfortable and safe. But what nobody
Hmm.
tells you is if comfortable and safe, if your childhood was toxic and abusive,
Hmm.
that's what your nervous system is going to recognize as home.
Hmm.
And so I had to start getting into relationships with people, making friends with people that felt uncomfortable, that actually triggered me because they really were safe. And my nervous system's like, we're used to the roller coaster. We're used to inconsistency. We're
Hmm.
used to emotional unavailability.
Right.
We don't know what to do with all of this. And that was a really hard process for me to go through as well. But it's so worth it because now while I still have a small circle, I have friends that I know I can count on. I
Hmm.
attract partners who are emotionally available, who are ready to
Hmm.
take responsibility, who aren't anything like my parents.
Right. I don't, I was going to tell you this at the end of our call, but I'm just going to tell you now. But since the very first time you and I talked, um, I've thought about you almost every day.
Oh, really?
Yes. And you just cross my mind all the time. And I think when and you know what you told me
Yeah.
about, what you had said and
Hmm.
what I need to do. I had already had a glimmer of that in my mind, but um, like it really kind of it just has stuck, and I'm starting to put the plans in place for that and everything. It meant the world to me,
Oh,
and
I'm so happy to hear that.
and you mean the world to me because it just, like you said, like if people come into your life once you have this, experience and this healing journey, it opens up so many avenues for
Yeah.
these new amazing people to come into your life. And that's a perfect example. Like it's meant so much to me. I just want you to know that. And
Oh,
you literally, like, you cross my mind at some point almost every day, just like, wonder what she's doing or how she's doing, or just, hey, Joanna, you know what I mean? It just was so profound. That little thing you said, just meant the world. And I think I would just am telling you that because A, I want you to know that, but B, you never know what you're being there for somebody that, I mean, we've only met virtually,
yes.
and stuff, but you just never know what some little thing is going to do to somebody and the
Yeah.
impact it's going to have on their life. And this is why when you start healing and, you know, your circle becomes small and people disappear, but it opens up doors for all these other amazing people to come into your life. And
Yeah.
whether it's in person or virtual, do you have all the clairs?
Yes.
Okay.
Even smell and taste, which I don't recommend. I don't like those, but
Yeah, because um, so I know what all the clairs are. Can you
yeah.
kind of explain? Because I don't have those abilities. So can you kind of explain to people what those are really quick?
Which one? All of them?
Yeah, just what they all are.
So claircognizance is a knowing where it's
Hmm.
not like you heard something. It's just like you just know something. It's like something just drops in and you know it. Usually
Hmm.
happens like in a conversation or something. It's just like something comes out of your mouth.
Hmm.
Or you just know I need to go this way, but you have no
Yeah.
reason or thing to go why. Clairvoyance is clear seeing. So most
Hmm.
people experience clairvoyance in their dream state. So if you're somebody that has vivid dreams or
Hmm.
remembers their dreams, if you're remembering your dreams, it's not a dream, it's a message,
Hmm.
or it was an experience because when you go to sleep, you're really awake. And when we're
Yeah.
awake, we're really asleep, right?
Mhm.
But you can also see things with your third eye or your physical eye. So I see more with my eyes open. I see
Okay.
physical energy more. When I close my eyes, I see blue streaks everywhere, you
Hmm.
know? So everybody's clairvoyance is different. But I always tell people if I say pink unicorn, even if you don't see a picture of a pink unicorn, you know what a pink unicorn would look like. That is
Right.
still clairvoyance.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be a movie reel inside of your
Hmm.
head.
Okay.
Clairaudience is clear hearing, and there's
Hmm.
multiple levels to that. Most of the time, you hear things in your own voice, but you'll
Hmm.
hear words like you or we. You will have a personality come through or hear words that you wouldn't say or, you know, a way you wouldn't speak it. That's somebody speaking to you. But you can also hear in that person's voice. That once you hear in someone else's voice, it's 9 times out of 10, you're what we call a trans channel, a physical medium, because they're utilizing your voice box to convey their voice because
Hmm.
they don't have a voice box, right? And they don't have a way to do that. They're telepathic. Um, and then we have clairsentient, which most people are clairsentient. Clairsentient is sensing. It's not clear feeling, that's different. Clear sensing is you're sensing energy coming into your auric field, and it's giving you a feeling of something. So when you ever say, I have a feeling this is going to happen, you know, I have a
Hmm.
feeling that person's, you know, cheating or lying or whatever,
Hmm.
that's clairsentience. And
Hmm.
most highly sensitive or empathic people are clairsentient. And that,
Hmm.
you gotta remember the range of these can be really intense and wide open, or you could be at the beginning stages. So don't judge where you are.
Right.
Clear feeling is more of feeling inside of the body. So when clear feeling, that's where my medical intuitiveness comes in. So I'd be at a grocery store or at a restaurant, I could feel something wrong with somebody, you know, or
Hmm.
a nodule, and I'd be like, you should go get your thyroid checked, or you know,
Yeah.
this or that, and they'd be like, oh, I don't have any issues. I'm like, just please
Yeah.
vacate me, just go. And nine
Yeah.
times out of ten, I was right, right? Nobody,
Right.
no medium, no psychic is perfect ever, so just
Right.
get that out of the way.
Well, because you're still human.
Yeah, we are, and we have our own filters, right? So,
Yes.
and then we have I never can pronounce the technical words for them, but we have clear taste and clear smell. So smell is one, it's taste and smell are the rarest ones to have. But the thing that most people smell are two things. One is a fire. I don't know why, but most people smell a fire when there's no fire around. And the other one um, is as if somebody farted.
Okay.
When that happens,
Like that sulfury kind
yeah,
of.
but
Okay.
your guides are being cheeky, right? They're being funny and they're trying to get
Okay.
your attention because you're going to
Okay.
stop and smell something. But when you smell something that is not anything you should be smelling, what's the first thing that comes to you? Is it a memory? Is it a thought? You got to pay attention to that. The smell is trying to trigger something like grandmother's
Mhm.
cookies, you know, something that your grandma always made or your dad always made. There's a connection there.
Mhm.
For me, my mother's mother comes through with a certain scent. Goddess Kali Ma comes in with a different scent. So
Mhm.
some guides show up and I know who they are by the scent that I smell.
Mhm.
And then taste is pretty obvious. You're going to taste things.
Yeah.
So I remember doing a mediumship reading back when I did medium readings, and I tasted cigarettes in my mouth when I was doing the reading. And I used to be a smoker. I quit a long time
Right.
ago, but I was like, oh, and I was like, did they smoke? Yes, they were a chain smoker. And it's like, okay, well, you could have told me that. I didn't need to taste it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? But you can, when there's a blood problem, usually you'll taste something wrong with their blood. You'll taste metal in your mouth. You know, so
Right.
it's this process of building your dictionary of what things mean to you when you hear it,
Mhm.
when you see it, when you feel it, when you smell it. And everybody's dictionary is a little bit different. But those are the main senses.
So I've always had this ability, and it's getting actually more stronger now. When you brought up dreams, it made me think of this. I've always, Like I can remember my dreams, not all the time, but I can remember my dreams. And if it was that profound, I have the ability to go to bed the next night and start off where I left off in
Yeah.
the dream. And like if I, you know what I mean? Because I like, sometimes you don't want it to end,
Yes.
or you go to a good concert, you don't want it to end. It's like kind of like that. So I'm able to like close my eyes tonight, now the next night, and start off where I left off with that dream.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, but it doesn't happen very often. But
Yeah.
I've never really paid attention to the message. So now that you're telling me that, I need to just start paying more attention to that.
I always tell people, put a notebook by the side of your bed,
That's
and
what I'm going to do.
right when you open your eyes, write down everything you can remember, because we actually dream in reverse. So
Oh,
the end of the dream is really the beginning. So we kind of
mm,
go backwards through it because Earth's frequency is we're inverted.
right.
So everything's kind of backwards. But pay attention to the colors of a car, the numbers you see, if there's animals, the people that were there, how you remember feeling. Don't overthink the message. Just
Hmm.
start writing down everything you can remember, because if it's a red car, the car might not be significant, but the color red might be,
Mm,
right? If there's a
yeah,
number showing up, if you're in a room and all of a sudden you see 555 on a clock, that's gonna have a message for you, right? So it's if there's something going on, who was in it? And sometimes our dream space is utilized for us to purge and work things out in the astral plane so that we don't
mm,
have to work it out in the physical form, which I highly
mhm,
recommend doing that as much as possible. And other times we're going to visit and learn, and we're exploring other dimensions and other frequencies.
mm,
And other times we have people like our guides or past loved ones who are coming to visit us and have a
mhm,
message for us, or trying to warn us, or trying to guide us.
mhm.
And so I always say, don't overthink it. What's the very first thing that comes to you of what it could mean? And you just have to trust that, even if it doesn't make sense.
And then do you think doing that enough, you'll start to see a pattern?
Yeah.
Like a pattern will start registering, like maybe after a couple weeks or something?
Yeah, and especially if it's a repetitive dream. But if you're going to bed the next night and continuing on, you weren't done with the story, but you ran out of time in a
Right.
sense.
Yeah, the alarm went
Or
off.
or you can only process. This is another one. The guides never want us to over process too much at once. We were never meant to do that. We were never meant to be like, I have to fix it all at once. I have to redo everything
Yes.
all at once. I have to heal it all at once. It's like, okay, you had this night to process this part, and now we're going to take you into this night where you're going to process this part,
Yeah.
you
Baby
know?
steps.
Yeah. And sometimes it
Do
can be precognition, which is, again, that's a psychic, it's precognition, psychicness, astral projection, astral traveling. It's all kind of the same thing. You're going
Oh,
into another time and space to see
yeah.
something that hasn't happened yet, but it
Yeah.
already has, because everything happens at once.
Right.
So sometimes we get information and then we feel deja vu when it shows up in front of
Hmm.
us.
you brought up astro traveling. I am fascinated about that. Like I
Yeah.
could talk to you about that for hours, but we won't go down a rabbit hole. I could do that easily. But I know we all have guides, and
Yes.
I'm just now trying to learn who mine are, and I'm trying to teach myself some tools to get more in touch with that. Are typically our guides loved ones, or could they be
No.
people we don't even know usually?
Guides are never loved ones. Loved ones are guardian angels or
Okay.
guardians, right? They watch out for you, they send you signs, they're there to comfort you, but they are not guides.
Okay.
So most people are born with at least one, if not two, guides
Hmm.
that stay with them their whole entire human life. And
Okay.
guides can be one of two things. They can be you in another time space reality,
Hmm.
or they can be a soul family member guiding you. So someone in your soul tribe, because we have an oversoul that has a whole family of people that we decided that you're going to come into my life at this time and do this, right? So some of those people may decide to stay in another dimension and guide you from the other
Mm-hmm.
realms. So everybody has that. And the other thing is then you're going to have guides that come in and out at different times for different reasons,
Mm-hmm.
based upon your journey, your level of awareness, what you might need. And they may be there for a week. They may be there for 2 years.
Yeah, I just read that they're there waiting for you to be open for them to
Mhm.
give you the messages. You just have to be open for it.
Sometimes people will say, as I'm going to sleep, I see like a carousel of faces, and they'll see just face after face after face. And I always say those are different guides
Mm-hmm.
coming into your field to see, one, if you're ready for them, and two, if it's time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when you'll often see. And a lot of times people say, like, I don't recognize the faces. I'm like, yeah, you probably won't.
You won't.
But the thing that people always get caught up on is, I need to know my guide's name. I need to know this.
Right.
Here's the thing. Yes, they might have names as a way of identifying themselves, but they're going to give you a name that's you're going to remember or resonate with. So it doesn't really matter. It's never their real name. Especially if you're working like I do. A lot of my guides are extra dimensional beings who have never had an earthly experience, which makes it
So
a little
aren't
more
don't
challenging for
have a
me.
name probably.
They don't, or if they do, it's not something I'm going to understand, right? It's
Right.
not something in my human brain or dictionary, because they have to utilize our mind to
Right.
communicate with us. And so I learned very early on that I don't need to have a name for them, but you
Mm-hmm.
can sit and meditate. And a practice that I always give my clients who are new on their journey is take a time, whether it's 15 minutes, an hour, whatever you want to do, just be consistent every day and sit down and meditate with the intention of, I want to connect with my guide, my
Mm-hmm.
primary guide, and only my primary guide, so that I can attune to their energy and understand when they're working with me.
Okay.
And then sit and do that for at least 7 days, if not more, consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to notice, like, all you need to do is breathe and pay attention to what you feel, what you're
Mm-hmm.
sensing. Do you feel cold? Do you feel a
Mm-hmm.
sensation in your body? Do you get a smell? Do you hear something? And it may not happen right away, because oftentimes people have expectations and they're seeking. But when you're
Mm-hmm.
seeking, you can't be receiving. So you need to just be present and focus on your breath and
Mm-hmm.
allow for whatever to happen. And it could even just be a color. So, like, a lot of times when the Pleiadians, which is an extra dimensional race, come in, my heart explodes open. I could cry almost instantly, and often cry when I'm channeling, because they're such heart-based beings. And if
Mm-hmm.
my eyes are closed, I see nothing but very vibrant blue swirls.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just learned by doing that process for myself. Now, when these beings come in, I can tell almost immediately who's there, just because of their energetic signature that I have
Mm-hmm.
attuned to by taking the time to practice attuning to them.
Yeah, so I've been too broad because I've been like, what do you want me to see today?
Yeah.
Where I need to be very more specific until I get in touch with, like you said, my main guide. Then I can start branching out a little bit, but I have a lot of work to do to get in touch with that main,
Well, when you say that, when you're saying, show me what I need to see today, you're not just speaking to your guide, you're speaking to the universe and
yeah.
all the resources. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, because if you get something, that's wonderful, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows how to channel. Every single person, right? Even athletes, they channel. They're focusing on
Yes.
on a flow of information, on a flow of energy. And so if you're wanting to be specific and communicate with your guides, just so that you can have more conversations with them and receive more information from them, then the best thing to do is to sit and isolate that energy.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to start doing. Um, with your coaching, I know you do all, because I know I want to be respectful of your time, but I know you do all different kinds of coaching.
Yeah.
So, all trauma based.
No, in fact, that's the cool thing about me is I have such an expansive toolbox
Yeah.
that, I mean, everybody has trauma. Let's be real. It doesn't all mean big T trauma.
Well,
Because
COVID gave
yeah,
everybody trauma, whether they
right.
wanted it or not. So,
Exactly.
and so does menopause.
the world is giving us trauma right now,
Yes,
you know?
it is. Yeah.
So it's everybody has trauma, and everybody's trauma has created identities that have shaped them, that have certain limiting programmings and limiting beliefs that keep you stuck repeating cycles.
Hmm.
So I do offer single sessions. I call them quantum shift sessions. But my goal is private mentorship, and then I have an evolve community that is a really like the first place I would tell anybody to enter into, start there. But when private mentorship, I've done everything from helping people learn and develop their psychic gifts and
Hmm.
have those energetic boundaries and develop their skills so that they can choose to either use them for themselves or go on and do
Hmm.
this as a profession, to working with people who are very well established in this industry, who are visionaries and leaders and out there doing the same thing that I am, but are stuck in an old identity. They're stuck in a frequency that's not serving them, and they need to shift. They need to
Yes.
shift the frequency and integrate it so it's not temporary. Because my
Hmm.
whole mission is, be the change you want to see, but it's I help you shift your frequency so that you can create the reality that you are desiring. And
Hmm.
everybody has a desire. I want my life to look a certain way. Now, is it gonna look exactly that way? No, but there's a feeling that
Hmm.
so-called life is going to give you. You have
Yeah.
to learn to shift into that frequency
Hmm.
without having the thing, and that's not easy for people to
It's
do.
you're talking about Neville.
Yes, I love Neville Goddard, but it's
Yep.
it's quantum jumping. You can call it quantum leap. You can call it a
Yep.
timeline shift. It's all you're doing is shedding an old identity and
Hmm.
getting to the core authenticity of who you are, and
Hmm.
that is the most magnetic version of you.
Yeah, that's so hard to do.
It is because
Yeah.
people have they're attached and they want to control the outcome, and it didn't
Hmm.
look this way and it has to go this way. And so you
Hmm.
have to learn the art of surrender, and you have
Yep.
to learn the art of integration. And I've really those expectations, detachment, surrender, those are life lessons for me.
Yeah.
And we're meant to teach what we're meant to master. And
Hmm.
so I have taught those concepts in everything that I do, because every time I teach it, I integrate it a little more and a little more and a little more. But the identity shifting and shedding, it was such a powerful process for me. And
Hmm.
it's really not complicated. It's just about consistency.
Okay.
And there's certain things that you can do. And again, it's not about monopolizing your day and your time. It's just learning these concepts, right? And so I
Yeah.
have specific programs that are just for that. I have
Hmm.
specific programs that are for people who are like, oh my God, I just woke up. I'm seeing things. I don't know what to do with this. So, and
Yeah.
all the way through trauma healing, teaching people how to channel and, uh, you know, access frequency and use it for healing. So I have a very big spectrum and of what I can do for people. So I've worked with people who are not in my industry, who are in the corporate world. And I've worked with people who are in my industry, and I've worked with people
Hmm.
who are just desperately trying to heal the pain of their childhood.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you tell everybody how to get a hold of you? Because I'm sure
Yes,
there's going to be people interested.
you can go to johannabirkhart.com. I always recommend, if you're new to me, I do offer a first time session rate, a special rate for the first time you've ever worked with me. But my Evolve community, you get access to every piece of digital content and course I've created, and you get access directly to me. And then
Mhm.
um, obviously I have other things that I do, but I'm on social media on all platforms. You can just
Yep.
search Johanna Birkhart or official Johanna Birkhart. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook,
Mhm.
YouTube. I have it all, and I share very vulnerably and very freely, because
Mhm.
why obviously this business is meant to support me as well. My mission is to help people, and so
Yeah.
I've had people come to me that have never paid me a dollar in their life and say, you've changed my life by just how freely you share. And I'm
Right.
like, awesome, because My job is to make you not need me anymore.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
that's
you're
yeah.
paying me to not, and I'm going to tell you, like, no, like you're paying, I want you to not need me. I want you to be on your own 2 feet and be able to do this
Mhm.
work for yourself, you know?
That's awesome.
It is. And
And
there's not a lot of people out there anymore that do that. They want to keep you coming back. And I feel like that's not right.
right, right. Well, and I'll include all the links, with so everybody knows, knows how to get a hold of you and
Yeah.
everything. And your journey is so so interesting to me. I could talk, I told you, but I've told you the few times we've talked, I could talk to you for hours about this stuff. Um, but are you okay with time? We're
Yeah.
at
No, I'm good.
okay. And I just want to ask you really quick, did I tell you last time we talked about Lionsgate, what happened to me?
I don't think so. I'm curious what
So,
happened.
well, it was so crazy because I had literally the week of the final of Lionsgate, I had just learned about it. I didn't even know what it was. I had just read about it and I was so intrigued. So, of course, go down my rabbit hole that I always do. Well, that last night, which was, I think, the most powerful night of it, I had this dream and I was like half asleep, but I was half awake kind of thing. And there was this energy that came through my body, this just electric kind of tingling, really powerful tingling energy that came through my whole body. I almost felt like I was being lifted off the bed because
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of really heavy, deep manifesting and praying, whatever people want to call it, or but which I do both. I pray and
Yeah.
I manifest. Well, I was like, I was so like open to it because I'm like, this is so cool. But I got a little freaked out because for a second there, I did literally feel like I was being lifted a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, so I ended up falling asleep. That next morning, I got up at 5 to go to the gym and it was still dark out. And I walked out my front door and there was a roar of a lion. Like it was so loud. I thought it woke my boyfriend up. It was like it was standing at my front door. The roar was that loud. It scared the shit out of me because we live in Florida. So I'm like, is that a panther, a Florida panther? But it wasn't, but I was
Yeah.
like trying to come up with some logical reason for this. And I got like, it freaked me out. Like, I'm not walking outside to the car. And I shut the door and I locked the door and I never went to the gym. But that experience I had, it's totally changed because now I'm like, oh my gosh, it's working. Like what
Yeah.
I'm doing is working. And it was just so like incredibly profound. I've never had anything like that happen to me before.
So that you went through what you were feeling in your body, that is a frequency
Yeah.
upgrade, as for lack of a better word. You were
Yeah.
shifting into a higher frequency. And so
Yeah.
you received that information through your column of light, that energy, and then it takes a little time for it to completely unfold. I call it like a
Mhm.
zip drive. They
Yeah.
download it into you, and you can, depending on the intensity or the frequency, it'll change the way that it feels. But I love that you clairaudiently heard a lion roar.
It was like it was standing like
Hmm.
at my like what is that? Well, those movies that you hear that roar in the beginning of the movies
Yeah,
that
it's like Lions Management or Lionsgate is a production company
yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That it was that roar.
yeah,
And so I think it was a message to me just saying keep doing what you're doing,
yeah,
because it was just that last because I probably would have forgotten about it.
yeah.
What it had happened the night before
But you're
and
not going to now.
it was kind of like, this is you're on the right path, like and so I need to still focus in on that more, but it was so crazy. I'm like, holy shit, like it's actually working, But that's what you're saying. It's like little steps. It's just practice over and over and
Yeah.
over again.
And trust me, as somebody that had everything open all at once, you don't want that.
No, I can't
I,
even imagine.
Mm-mm. And I went through a healing crisis with mine, and so I do something called I'm only one of like 25 people who's certified in what's called DNA activation and restructuring. We work with your ethereal DNA to
Mhm.
open yourself up to the higher dimensions, to access more of yourself, and to bring very deep healing and alignment. And I'm the only practitioner that does it the way that I do because I don't want anybody to go through a healing crisis. So
Yes.
mine is structured in a way that it unfolds over 3 to 6 months at each level you go through with me,
Okay.
because otherwise, if it opens all at once, you're going to cave under that pressure. You're going to lose your mind, which isn't always a bad thing, but can make you feel a little crazy, and you
Mm-hmm.
can be more irrational, and it can be too much to process.
Mm-hmm.
So I see these people trying to force a Kundalini awakening or trying to force their third eye open. I'm like, you can't do that. When you're ready, when you're in
Mm-hmm.
the right state of being, the ability to process it and handle it, it will happen. You just have
Mm-hmm.
to surrender and sit with yourself. And, it doesn't mean you can't do practices, but don't force it.
Right.
Let things unfold in the way that they need to unfold for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true because I wouldn't want that all at once either. It's got to be very overwhelming and like I could see how it could set you way back or re-traumatize you.
Oh, it was devastating.
Oh
Like
my gosh.
it was crippling and overwhelming because you don't know what's happening while you're also processing all these things that you had blocked out.
Mm-hmm.
So just in the gifts alone, it's just I can't, there's no other word, but it's just completely overwhelming.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I can't even
But
imagine that.
it had to happen that way for me because one, then I developed the process that I did so that other people wouldn't go through a healing crisis. And
Yes.
two, it forced me to learn energetic boundaries because I am the biggest extrovert. I love to be around people. I love to go to
Mm-hmm.
concerts. I love to go to events.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn how to turn my gifts down,
Mm-hmm.
lower my frequency a little bit. I
Mm-hmm.
had to learn to observe and not absorb. I had to learn to have that
Mm-hmm.
filter of discernment so that I could have a human life, because what I do is wonderful and healing and helpful, but I don't live in that 100% of the time. I'm also here to be a human and to make mistakes and to enjoy the human journey. And so I have to create that separation for myself. It's not like my intuition is ever off. It's just that I don't want to be at a restaurant, because I used to go to restaurants and I'd be sitting there and I'd have so many people's loved ones, because spirit doesn't have boundaries. They see your light on, they're like, hey, her light's on. And so I would have so many loved ones around me, and my hands would be on the table, and my whole body would start to shake. And my husband at the time would be like, why are you shaking the table? I'm like, I'm not. My body is, because I had so many people trying to get my attention to go talk to other people and say, hey, I'm here or whatever. And I was like, you just want to go into like this. You're like, I don't want to go out. And so I had to learn how to have boundaries with spirit and be like, no, we're not doing
Mm-hmm.
that today. And also, a lot of people are really aware of people like Teresa Caputo, right? She has on
Of
TV.
course.
It is very unethical to walk up to a stranger and give them a message, even if you're hearing it, because you don't know the state that that person's in, and if they're
Yeah.
going to be receptive or if it's going to re-traumatize them.
Right.
And so spirit doesn't understand that either. They're just really wanting to help.
Right.
And
They
so
have
it's
no
like
boundaries, like you said.
you have to have boundaries, you
Yeah.
know? So it's
Wow.
really important.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you say that because I'm like thinking, okay, well, they don't have any boundaries. So you almost have to set boundaries with them once you identify that they're trying to send you stuff,
Yeah.
new messages. You almost have to be like, all right, wait a minute. It's too fast.
Well, and sometimes in the beginning, you don't always know where you're getting the information from, and you might just blurt something out when you're talking to somebody.
Yeah.
And so it's just that process of, again, knowing energetic boundaries is knowing where you end and another energy begins, and noticing the difference, like something shifting inside of you, so that you can be like, okay, this is not me. I'm receiving something. Is it appropriate for me to say right now?
Mm,
And so if it's a friend or um, a loved one or like a family member or something, it's just asking, are you open to this? And
yeah.
most everybody knows what I do, but there's
Yeah.
been times where um, I went 4 years ago. I flew out to San Diego to visit family, and I went to dinner with a couple of girlfriends that I hadn't seen in a while. And one of our friends was really, really sick. He was an alcoholic. He was our age, and I hadn't seen him on social media. I hadn't seen him in a few years, so I had no idea that he was even sick. And
Mm.
they were starting to talk about him. And when they said his name, it blurted out of my mouth, "He's still alive." And I was like, it just came out. And they all stopped and they said, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, at that point, I was like, I don't think he's going to live much longer. I think he's already past he's hanging on past his time of when he was supposed
Wow.
to go. It was 5 days later. I walk into another girlfriend's house who is like me, and she's like, "There's some guy with you and Jesus." I'm like, "Yeah, they've been here for a little while, like a good 30 minutes." And I said, "I haven't sat down to connect with them because I've been running around." And as soon as I sat down, my phone went off, and it was my girlfriend. And she said he died. He just died. And I was
Mm.
like, "Well, that explains who's with me."
Well,
But
and now you probably like, you were like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that, you know?
yeah,
It's got to be hard though, because when you're in the moment, you're with
yeah,
friends that you can trust and you
yeah,
talk with your girlfriends openly.
yeah.
So it's
I
got
mean, in that case, it was okay. But I always,
right.
usually when I go out to with my friends and stuff, I'm not in that energy, right? I don't, I'm not in that space. So it just came right out. But that's, I mean, like, even though I'm turning it down, it's never off,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But it was fine. It wasn't a big deal. But for me, it's like now when I feel someone coming through, I put my tongue to the roof of my mouth so that I
Mhm.
don't speak until I'm ready to speak. It helped. It's
Yeah.
a little trick I did to
Oh,
stop.
oh, good. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So you've learned how to kind of pause, to hit a pause button for a
Yeah.
minute. Wow. Because that I was wondering if you can just shut it off, you know?
Yeah, I can. And then there's other times where I want to shut it off, but they're saying it's important. Something
It's too
has to come.
much. You
There's something
gotta,
that has to come through. So they're like, "No,
yeah.
we have to work with this first, and then you can take a break."
Right, right, right. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been so amazing. I'm so honored to have you on, and I would love to have you on again.
Yeah, I would love to.
It's just been so amazing in your story and your journey, and I'm sure there's so many more layers that we
Oh
could
yeah.
go much deeper as with everything you've been through and getting to where you are now. But I think a lot of people are gonna hit like some aha moments, because I was getting chills and having them just talking to you even the very first time we chatted. So,
I
this is,
always tell people we come into each other's lives for a reason, a season,
yeah,
or a lifetime, you know? And
yeah, I
so
know.
I don't feel like this is an accident. I feel like these types
Yeah.
of experiences
At least
were
for
by
me, it
design.
wasn't, because
Yeah.
it's meant the world to me to know you.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And
Thank
we'll
you so
stay
much.
connected for sure.
We will, and you're part of the Rockstar family now.
Yeah. I
Thank
love it.
you.
Thank you
It's
so much for
awesome.
having me.
The content on this podcast revolves around personal life experiences and is meant to serve as a learning tool. I'm not a certified therapist or medical expert. This podcast does not offer medical or psychological or professional advice. If you're curious about your mental and physical well being, feel free to reach out to a licensed healthcare professional for assistance.